Welcome to Dysfictional, an RPG-focused podcast. I am Tukey, former academic gone ranger, and still don't have anything funny to say, so take it away, Randy.
I'm Randy, the random generator.
It sounded like there was going to be more, like that was like your movie trailer voice or something. I was expecting there to be like, in a world.
So take it away, Ginger.
Okay, well, speaking of movie trailers, I'm Ginger and I'm a professional film industry victim. Going on 2 years in a row. Ding.
I just feel different, you know?
Why?
Changed,
What happened?
man. I don't know.
In a world of change.
Why do you feel changed?
You know, it's just reasons. I can't get into it right now. Don't worry about it. Don't look at me.
Wait, can you tell if he still has the book?
I thought you got rid of that.
Don't worry about it.
We got some stuff to talk about.
What's happening today?
Yeah, we're just going to ignore that. And we are going to talk about Genasi tonight.
The random generator.
Oh, there it is.
Oh my.
Yep.
Oh, was it stuck in there like a burp or something that has to come out sometimes?
What? I thought we just started.
Yeah, no, we're professionals, folks.
So, Genasi.
Yeah, the Genasi tonight. So we're going to do a little bit of a discussion and dive into some of the information about them, the sub-race parts of them as well, and a little bit about how we would play or roleplay them. But to get things kicked off, Genasi...
Would you say that we're going to do a deep dive or a flyby?
Or sink into the history?
I don't know where you're going with this. This is a very serious conversation about Genasi.
Okay, well, let's get crackling.
So Genasi are the offspring of genies and mortals, or two mortals who are Genasis themselves, or potentially even just a lot of elemental stuff going on around some mortals.
Zaddy genie.
Yeah, we can go with that. Why don't we open it up from there? Anything in particular you guys want to discuss about the Genasi?
I do think that it's cool that they're a race that have a genie history. So you could have a lot going on with that and even introduce other planes really easily with Genasi, whether you want to or not as your character. But I do think it's interesting. And while I didn't have a Genasi, you actually had a Genasi, Tukey, and I actually did briefly have a bit of the elemental plane of water as a part of the campaign. But then also my genie warlock even had a little bit to do with genies and stuff. So having a race of that is kind of cool. Although they don't have, I think, a lot to offer in terms of the genie part. They don't have like cool spells or anything, but they do get their body functions more similar to their element, which does have its own neat abilities.
They're definitely largely just elemental based in flavor wise, right? Like they don't necessarily have, like you said, a lot of the racial aspects of what a magical creature like a genie would have, but they do take after their elements. And I think it was my first character I ever made was a fire Genasi, and I just went like full on with her and also made her like a wildfire druid. So it's just easier to just be
Double
all
up.
Fire all the time.
Yeah.
But, you know, she had like hair that was vaguely on fire. I like that a lot of their traits are a little bit flavor traits. Like you can't burn someone with your fire hair. But if you're like a water Genasi, sometimes your hair just sort of flows around you as though you're underwater, even though you aren't. And like, who wouldn't want that in real life? That's like permanent hair commercial all the time in your everyday life. Like that would be cool.
Genasi themselves, it's a very inspiration heavy race, I feel like, for anyone who's designing their character, their background, their story, their personality as well. We'll get into role playing here in a bit, but as I mentioned at the top, it could be that it was a genie and a mortal who were the parents of the Genasi, which could lead to a lot of interesting motivations for potentially seeking out the genie parent or trying to learn more about the heritage or not caring about it. trying to go your own way. It could also be a combination of two Genasi parents, which could be interesting because not all, but some of the Genasi sub classes can be a little more aloof or a little more outcasts in a sense. And so it'd be interesting to see how they came together, or maybe they're two different types of Genasi, right? Or I did see one smaller way that a Genasi is created, which is essentially a normal mortal birth, but in an area with a super high elemental energy saturation that can almost like taint the birth, I guess, so to speak, and create a Genasi from a non-Genasi parent, which would be kind of an interesting backstory too.
Yeah, it's if there's a solar flare, like an elemental solar flare or something.
Yeah, almost like timing created it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one is really interesting because it would be a total surprise to all parties involved. You'd be
Why
like,
did you cheat on me with?
Yeah, exactly. Like the guy's like, when were you with a genie? And like, I didn't, I swear. And it just turns out that like the elemental plane of Earth, there's a door in your backyard you didn't know about.
You could even have a additional backstory of someone trying to find out like the history of what went on in the world that would have created you. Like if you believed your mom, but let's say your dad didn't, and left or something, you find out why, like, why am I this way or something? We could have a cool backstory. That is a really cool idea because my other option was leaning into the elemental part. And while you're not a genie, you're still from a plane of like earth, air, fire, etc. And it would be cool to have that idea or even be from there maybe in some sort of way or fashion rather than having kind of a tie with a genie parent or even a Genasi parent, but maybe like normal parents that took refugee in the elemental plane of water somehow survived and gave birth, and due to the elements there you were a Genasi, like something crazy. I think it would be a cool concept to build from.
It almost feels like should be its own subclass, right? Instead of just a race. It feels like if you had basic elemental powers at the beginning, as you leveled, your elemental powers should grow. If I was going to make it a subclass, I would say, at level 10, you get, if you're an Earth Genasi, you get Earth Glide, or, it seems like you should be developing more of that as you continue, but it's just not built into it that way because it's just the starting features for a race. But you can also take your build and try to find things that will add those things to it, which is why I went Druid. But
I believe all of them actually do gain at 5th level or even 3rd level or something in additional spells. So they do kind of get something, but I do think outside of spells, which is kind of an easy way for it, it would be neat to be like, as an Earth Genasi, even like, so one thing surprising with the Earth Genasi is that they don't have a way to, say, harden their skin to stone and gain extra. You see, something like bark skin, but it's like stone skin or something, like, they don't have anything that really represents their body as much. I think like particularly Earth Genasi. Air Genasi can like, breathe very well. Fire Genasi gains like fire resist, which is cool. And Water Genasi does gain some acid resist, which is interesting. And then the amphibious, which is cool. But I actually kind of agree that it would be neat to have, instead of maybe spells, it would have some sort of growing feature with it. But I don't think a lot of subclasses or classes actually have that anyway. So
since you mentioned it, it is now talking about the subclasses specifically. It is kind of imbalanced, I will say. At least, this has been updated, but from what I was looking through, it looks like water and fire Genasi have actually quite a bit of little custom tweaks to them. Water Genasi get, breathe in air and water. They get the acid resist, like you mentioned, the swim speed. At level 1, they can shape water. At level 3, they can create or destroy water. Fire Genasi get dark vision, fire resistance. Level 1, they can produce a flame. Level 3, they can do burning hands, I believe. But then unfortunately for air and earth, and again, it could be corrected if I'm wrong, but air just gets unending breath and levitate. And then earth, I think, just gets the ability to not be affected by difficult terrain due to earth or stone. And something with Pass Without a Trace, I think, too. But unfortunately, it seems like air and earth are a little bit on the lighter side, and then water and fire have quite a bit extra little bonuses to being that subclass of Genasi.
I would give earth blind sense.
So based in Genasi, all get dark vision, so that's fine. I wouldn't say blind sense. I think Earth Genasi should have tremor sense.
Sense, yeah.
Because it makes total sense. They can feel the ground. I totally think they should have tremor sense, at least for something different. Maybe air Genasi with blind sense, though, because you could they feel the air pressure difference or something around them. You could explain that pretty well. It does feel like that earth and air have more of a utilital purpose. Utilital? Anyway.
Yeah, it's a word.
You heard it here first, folks.
And fire and water tend to have a more either combat or something else. Actually, water kind of has a little more utilital. I'm going to say that again
Utility?
now. No, utilital. It's a word now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, you say it enough times, it goes into the dictionary, like y'all. They have a little more of a utilital purpose too, third time, that I guess does kind of throw fire where it's, if you want to have some extra damage stuff, here you go. Especially because they can have Burning Hands and Flame Blade, which now they have a melee option and a caster option, both quite useful, while everyone else is like, well, I can create and destroy water or walk on it even. Not that it like disses them or anything like that. Like fire is your basically main option for the combat, but if you don't care about that so much or not trying to min-max or something, all the other options are so great. And like you can cast Featherfall and Levitate without it requiring components, and you don't need to do it on yourself. So it's a very useful utility that they can provide that even a barbarian could be like, oh crap, you're falling here, and saves you or something. That's a neat feature.
Yeah. And then, Genasi themselves, I think one last thing we could talk about here, just general Genasi information, is their appearance. It can actually be very, very customizable. Cool. Because at least one of their parents is of one of the mortal humanoid races, and or both of their parents could be Genasi, so they can also have a mix. So you could honestly mix and match or kind of customize and create your Genasi however you want. It could have elven features, dwarven features, or whatever you want to say that their lineage was. So it gives you a lot of customization there. Lifespan wise, I think they're similar to humans in their aging process, but then they tend to live a little bit longer, somewhere up to like 120. And then size, of course, kind of like I was saying, size can even vary depending upon their lineage. So very customizable. You can give them cool colors, red, green, blue, gray, depending on which subclass you want to pick as well.
I also think hybriding Genasi between each other would be cool. Like you have an earth and fire Genasi parents. While you can't have I would say an earth or fire Genasi that has kind of the cracked molten earth look like a volcano. If you combine it, and you can even try to homebrew a little bit of DM, like you modify features, like maybe like you gain these spells and then gain these spells, like change up the spells based off of it. Or instead of the earthen walk, I want the fire resist, but I also want, merge with stone. It'd be cool to have stuff like that happening with it too. But otherwise, yeah, the customization with them is really cool because you could be water, but you can also be ice. You could be like this kind of swamp look. There's so much you could do with this kind of creature to look different from any other Genasi even.
And of course, there's always the fifth element.
Heart?
Heart.
Well, that's a good amount of information on Genasi itself. What about how we might play them? Any cool ideas or ways that you guys might role play with this race as your character?
So my fire Genasi druid, her name was Ula, and I decided to, so they have pretty fleshed out personality traits in the player's handbook. Like you can read up what their moods usually are and things like that. The fire Genasi they can also come from specifically the Ifrit. So they're a lot more hot tempered. They're a little bit more prone to sort of bursts of mood swings, anger, violence, things like that. I took it a slightly different way. I had her more as being kind of like you were talking about before, Randy, like from another plane.
Yeah.
And I kind of modeled her personality based on Starfire from the
Nice.
good Teen Titans cartoon, where everything was just like, oh, what is this? Oh, who are you? Oh, and it was really fun because you can, for the backgrounds, you can do like far traveler or astral, like some sort of exploration, or any kind of wandering sort of background really matches somebody who came from another plane. And I didn't get to play her very long. I really only played her like 1 or 2 sessions before the campaign dissolved. And I always kind of wanted to revisit some of those ideas. And I think that's part of where a little bit of the motivation for my character I'm playing now came from. But she was really fun as someone from another plane, just sort of who didn't know anything about this world and had all these fire related powers.
Yeah, the fish out of water stuff. I always think that's a lot of fun to do in D&D because it's basically your own way of being new to the party and new to everything, but the being new to the party is cool. And you kind of get almost handheld by the party around for a while, and then, they learn things, and then you get to build upon that. And it's a unique situation where sometimes the fish out of water is kind of annoying in, let's say, like movies and stuff. But in D&D, I feel like it's uniquely well fitted that having one is a great experience. I think for mine, I almost went similar with yours. I think both mine are kind of like that, where I went more on the elemental side rather than a backstory. And my first one is a fire genasi that's, I'm going to say, similar to Rogue from X-Men, where she is afraid to touch others because of it'll catch them on fire or something. Maybe a little added feature that DM approved that they either burn things or it's really, really hot to the touch that like things can't really hold me for too long or something. So, I have to deal with that kind of consequence and stuff. And maybe someone down the road, has some sort of cool thing that helps with that. But I think that'd be almost like just not wanting to interact with much or keeping the distance with fire.
I also think the parental relationship would be fun to play with. Like you could either have, obviously you could go the route of, which seems kind of the obvious route of like, oh, my parents like rejected me because I was this weird elemental thing. Because also it doesn't have to be their direct parents that were with the genie. It can be back in their bloodline a long time. So it can take several generations. Yeah, or like my dad was convinced that my mom cheated with the genie and like kicked us out, and like I had to say, you could go that way, or you could go the other way where the parents are just like, oh, we've had this like amazing magical special child, and they try to like follow you around everywhere, and they're like super super like annoyingly supportive, and they insist on being parties, camp followers or whatever, so they can keep an eye on you and like. Because like, no, you don't understand. Like, they're really special. They were born different and we have to keep an eye on them. It's like, they treat you like, okay, honey, like go play with your friends, but be careful. Like, you can build in like some crazy sort of family dynamics with their backstories too.
Like you said, there's even a lot of already like potential inspiration within the manual of, what each subclass might be like. But of course you don't have to go with that. I know for the water genasi I played, Randy, you even kind of folded it into the campaign a little bit with the genie father being somewhat involved. But beyond that, I know one of the things it says in their backgrounds here is that typically the genies don't interact with the genasi at all or keep up with the family at all. But we actually did, or you actually did have that happen. My character didn't know about it, but he actually left like an amulet behind to communicate with my character's mother over the years.
Yeah, someone liked sending stones, basically.
Yeah, which was a little bit of a unique situation in the first place, but was kind of cool, and then played into it where, I thought it was really cool. I had like a set of armor that I was able to sort of activate a little bit, which was based off of the genie father, had some abilities with it, so it was cool to fold it in general. But yeah, but technically each one does have some base features that you can go with. It actually kind of reminds me of Avatar: The Last Airbender. So it says for like water genasi, they tend to be seafarers, a little more on the quiet side, seeking out solitude, but also going wherever they want.
Like the final stage of an air or of a bender for the last Avatar is becoming the element.
Yeah, I mean, like
Yeah.
air, they tend to be roamers, but they tend to really like to seek an audience. And then fire is always seeking notoriety and reputation and temperamental. And then, of course, earth can be a little more withdrawn, stoic manners, live in mountainous regions, and potentially be great leaders. So there's actually quite a lot of similarities there.
Yeah, there's great guidelines for that. And I think, again, with some of our ideas and my other idea with the water Genasi, I'll get to it in a sec. I think it opens up the door for a lot of interesting flavors that, again, can be unique to them. Sort of like a Fey ancestry for like elves can provide this unique life that seems foreign to almost anyone else. I think Genasis can further that. I had a fun, also small idea with a Genasi, specifically a water Genasi, where they're just afraid of the dark and you kind of don't get it for a while. And, you know, they're, whenever it goes in caves and stuff, they're like hiding behind someone and stuff. And throughout the campaign, you got to find out that it's just because in the deep depth, dark of the water, anything can happen down there, any crazy sea monster stuff. And so that's where they got their fear from.
Yeah, the water's scary, man.
Yeah, super scary.
Oh, so it's just a totally rational fear.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It is a rational fear. They just, you know, pertain that to all darkness instead of just water darkness.
That many people have.
Yeah.
But not me. Can I make I have a confession, you guys.
Uh-oh.
Whoa.
I have a confession all the way back from campaign 2. As you're talking about it, I just now realized your dad was a genie.
Wow.
I don't remember that ever being explicitly pointed out, but I was also concentrating really hard on trying to be French, so I could have missed it.
Not only that, but like the quote unquote armor he was given were bracers and like the vest, kind of like a genie vest and bracers.
Oh my God.
And it was boots. And I think they were curled on the front. I don't remember that part, but regardless.
Yes, they were. I
basically
do remember
like,
that.
Yeah. So
Oh my God.
it was a genie.
You're
style
blowing
outfit.
my mind. You're blowing my mind right now. That makes it so much freaking funnier that every time you were using the sending stones, I was like, Nano, what's your dad say? Nano, are you talking to your dad? Nano, what's going on with your dad?
Yeah, the whole group was very, very eavesdropping on my conversations when I was able to connect with them.
I did not realize it was a genie at the time. Okay, fun fact. Moving on. Someone, don't look at me.
No, but honestly, again, it just as we're talking about it, it gives, again, the player a lot of opportunities for customization because there's just a lot to pick from or go the opposite of what's already there. But then it also gives, remember you mentioned this before, but it gives the DM from their perspective a lot of potential little, bits and pieces to throw into a campaign that the player can follow, especially if it's, maybe there's the player's motivation becomes finding out some more about their lineage, and it doesn't have to just be a genie. It could be a djinn. It could be a Freet if they're like a fire Genasi. And maybe there's some pieces, maybe it's involved in like the main story of the campaign, maybe not. Maybe it's just sort of some aside quests, so to speak, that the player can follow if they're interested. Just a lot of opportunities there.
You just wanted to know who your father was, I think was most of your backstory. And it was a water-based campaign. And I always had at the end that it was going to be a Leviathan, but you guys are level 8, you're not going to fight a Leviathan. So it was going to be the point of banishing the Leviathan to the elemental plane of water where it originates. And I had it where your dad was already banished there due to a previous encounter with said Leviathan. And so he was pretty much stuck there. But he had a way to hold it there if it was brought back. But it wasn't brought back. It was just contained within the material plane. So it was a cool additional story that you're like, oh crap, like it actually makes a logical sense now why your father wasn't around and stuff. Like it was almost to make like he did intend to go get the milk, and he was on his way back, but then he got hit with, the banishment spell or something like that,
Yeah. And my mom never told me that she could have been talking to him the whole time and I could have known that. Anyway,
And here I was the whole time thinking that your normal human dad was in the elemental plane of water. Like, whoa, how'd that happen? Like, what? Like, is he okay?
We're going to have to bring this up with the group because I am curious now if anyone picked up on that, Randy, or if everyone just assumes that the father I was talking to that I was trying to have private conversations with and they were all interrupting was actually a genie in another realm.
Yeah, I am kind of curious about that as well.
I did not pick up on that. That's so funny.
Well, I mean, we had a lot of beautiful imagery. Yeah, we're talking about today with these water genasi, so that's kind of cool, right? A lot of nice scenes and everything. I'm sure nothing will ruin that.
No.
No, mister. No.
Wait, what?
What? Now that that's out of the way, let's move on to some Dysfictional. It's a segment where we kind of ask biological D&D monster questions that no one's really asking for. Tonight, we're here to talk about the bloated, grotesque creature of the depths of the abyss, weighing in at about 500 pounds and hovering at about 15 feet, is the Seabriex. This demon of corruption and pollution has a physiology unknown to even true demonologists, but that won't stop us. They hoard knowledge like a dragon hoards coins, and even hoards valuable collections like a dragon. The intelligent Seabriex enjoys bullying and tormenting weaker creatures, but tends to avoid anyone stronger or smarter than themselves. In terms of society, they're kind of top by design, honestly. They prefer to be surrounded by thralls or under abyssal lords whom they await the opportunity to betray. Even those wanting to stretch out their knowledge as advisors didn't hold back from manipulation to their superiors. In little time, the abyssal lords would often succumb to Seabriex's spells, such as feeble mind, to be controlled by the Seabriexes themselves. What about you guys?
I'm just super distracted by the images of this creature. It's haunting. I don't like it.
And I'll go into that as well.
So gross. It is so gross.
They're a little different than some of the other creatures we've talked about so far because, as you were describing, Randy, they tend to avoid enemies that are stronger than themselves.
Yeah.
We've talked about intelligent creatures before, but a lot of the ones we talked about were a little more aggressive, I guess. I mean, not that this thing's not aggressive, but it seems to know its limits a lot more, and that seems to impact how it would behave in its environment.
As I kind of pointed out, I definitely think it specifies more of a bully. It purposefully wants lower life forms and subjects, thralls and stuff, to control, manipulate, do whatever like it wants to do with them. And if it does have a lord or something, because they don't even mind being advisors and stuff to stronger people, but they will look for the opportunity to betray them at their first chance they could, and using powerful spells to do so if they need to. So yeah, they will make sure that they are at the top of the food chain in their area.
In general, bully is the perfect word to describe these guys. They have basically I tried to take it from, because I'm so repulsed by them. I tried to get into their mind a little bit to see what maybe they think. Let's just see what maybe they think of themselves as, right? So in their mind, if I was a Seabriex, in my mind, I would consider myself an artiste, a sculptor of flesh, a worker of elements, someone who can take matter from the abyss, dark matter, sheer raw magic, and mold it to my will and create new and interesting creatures. But to Ginger's mind, it looks like the monster from Inside. Have you guys played that game?
Yeah, gross.
We're talking about malleable flesh, right? That just is sort of molded, sculpted on. This is something straight out of a horror movie, but to them, they take like a delight in the perversions of the flesh. And by perversions, they literally mean, it's body horror. It's heavy modification. It reminded me of like the Harkonnens from Dune, just a whole family of these like flesh modification, ritualistic, power hungry beings that just want to spread their control across the universe. some images that I've seen of them, they also kind of remind me of somebody from the Ninja Turtles cartoon from when I was a kid, but I can't remember who it was. I just, like, a core memory was unlocked when I looked at their picture. But they're very sort of misshapes, like lots of shapes all balled into a ball, sort of squished together. But they see it as art. They see it as an art form. And it reminded me a little bit of sort of the desiccation of flesh too, like from Mad Max, like Immortan Joe from Fury Road is like a good example. Just beings that have like things pieced onto them, and that's what they're into. They like to do that to other creatures, subjugate other creatures. They don't really have like a religion or philosophy. It's just their drive is their artwork. And, you know, in some ways, I guess I relate, but ew.
Yeah, while supposedly they could have been spawned from several breeds of, you know, unholy experiments and stuff that kind of created these monstrosities, I actually wanted to speculate even further, despite our demonologists not knowing, that I think like a Seabriax has a central core, while other functions of a demon that needs to survive within there. But being masters of grafting abyssal matter, they would constantly be combining themselves with more and more matter until they resembled the sort of bloated ooze blisters you've now come to either love or hate. That core adapts uniquely to the new matter, that like a skin graft in a sense, but it's not perfect. So eventually the core sort of fights this foreign matter, which is why blood and bile are constantly dripping from itself.
Very nice. And I'll use the word interesting here, but they have some interesting abilities as well. One of which is that they can turn other creatures into abyssal wretches, essentially. And I think it takes some time to do it. I believe the creature has some chance to resist over like an hour or something like that. But if they actually do end up getting modified or turned into this abyssal wretch, it's something that can only be restored via a wish spell.
Yeah. They're high level monsters, so it makes sense.
The actual mechanic for that is crazy because basically you can save from it. If you save, you're immune to it for like a day or something. They can't do it again. But if you fail your save, it gives you a level of exhaustion. And if you fail to save again, you get another level and so on until literally you just die from exhaustion and it warps you at that point.
Yeah.
And they can also throw out as their legendary Feeble Mind. So your save would be useless if they hit you with that first. So it's a really scary ability.
That they also have a gut instinct to melt whoever they come across. They identify as an enemy. So they'll typically first use, like their first attack would be to, out of their feeding tube sort of thing, they'll push out like a bile acid to try to melt their enemy and weaken them. Yeah, I know it's a very lovely image here, but they have that. They also have the ability to manipulate the chains around their body using telekinesis. So they can kind of use those chains as weapons as part of their body. The other fun fact about these guys is that they, even though they're so heavy, they essentially have achieved buoyancy, which is how they float, similar to, I believe, beholders.
And funny enough, while they can free float easily, they're lazy enough that they actually have these chains wrapped around them and sort of anchored to the ground just so they don't have to focus on floating as much either. We'll start with how you feel like you defeated. We'll go with Ginger.
Right, from range.
What? You don't want to deal with the contamination?
No, the contaminated aura of 30 feet, the throwing up.
They can still squirt some bile at you.
You gotta stay away from that Feeble Mind. You need somebody with like Eldritch Spear. You need somebody with
tinfoil hats.
Yeah, you gotta stay away from this thing as much as possible.
Which for the 5e24 is now befuddlement, but go on.
Yes, befuddlement is the new name for Feeble Mind. This creature is my previous character, Domino's personal worst nightmare. Yeah. I was reading this and I was like, oh my gosh, not only is it the abilities that it has, but with the exhaustion mechanics and everything, and the resistances. It's resistant to like everything. It has advantage on saves against magical effects. It's resistant to like almost every kind of damage. Like, I would just snipe this thing over time from as far away as humanly possible and just keep moving away from it until eventually it either quit chasing me or it finally died from death from 1,000 tiny cuts, because I just wouldn't want to get anywhere near it.
Yeah. What about you, Tiki?
I have 3 possible ways I would defeat it, 2 of which are more comical. First, you reduce it and have your barbarian kick it as far as you can like a soccer ball. That's the funny one. That's one funny one.
Don't throw up. Boom.
The second one, which is still kind of funny, but would actually probably work, is it has chains around its body, which are metal and are also holding it down. And you could probably, I believe the spell is heat metal.
Yeah.
You could potentially do that to basically, as like almost a surprise thing of like throwing it completely off, as it would be more worried about shedding those or constantly taking damage.
I actually don't think it can, the way that it's built and stuff. I would actually argue that it's a harness for him. So like, can a horse just shake off a saddle, for example?
I mean, it happened to me once, but it's pretty rare.
Yeah.
So that was one that was a little bit funny, but actually I think would work pretty well, is heating metal on it. The other one is more psychological. So because it's always being a bully and tends to go for things like that, is basically either try to convince it in some way that maybe you're alone while the rest of your group is hiding, or use a familiar or something to basically attract it to thinking it is bullying something, or it is going to get advantage on something that is weaker than it.
Give it like a weak target.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then lure it into a trap using that as a way to fight it. So a couple options.
Yeah.
Well, those are all good.
I would argue he weighs too much even at reduce to kick him, but otherwise I do love it.
Reduce, levitate, kick. Okay, good.
But our barbarian gets big when he's ragey. So if it got small and our barbarian got big and he kicked it really hard.
I mean, maybe. I do think that it's surprisingly weaker at long range. Not that it's weak at long range by any means, but it can do a lot more at close range due to the contamination, due to the chains and stuff. So fighting it at range would be your best option, even if it was just super gross for you guys. I think as a DM, this kind of monster provides just a great opportunity, as the unknown origin and the flavor of grafting can make this monster incredibly versatile. And I would think perhaps the party was hunting a Walstrith who's been corrupting the waters, only to find a stronger Seabriex had already taken care of that. Grafting the creature onto itself, giving the stat block claws or the ability to breathe air and water.
No.
And now you create a combat where its contamination aura is a pool of bile and blood and adds suffocation to the combat encounter and just creates an environment to further overcome. Maybe after a short time passes, the Seabriex like disposes of the waste due to the kind of like rejective nature I sort of laid into it, and it can no longer hide within the pool. But I think like pool of blood and bile will be a great way for the party to go.
We're going to end up seeing one of these things, aren't we? You're way too delighted in this creature.
Oh, yeah. It is a demon-based campaign, so who knows?
Oh, and I'm the melee character.
Yeah.
And I've already been thrown up on twice.
You have, so it's only a matter of time before you're just like submerged in it.
I'm sure you got this, and if not, well, I mean, then the next character can always do it.
My next character is going to be a demonologist.
Yeah.
Or is it?
This is the Flash Round, where we take turns creating the bones of a character that anyone can use. If you play one, let us know who they become. Roll initiative.
What'd you roll, Randy?
There's 9.
Why do you always have to think about it? I rolled a 4.
I rolled an 18.
Not supposed to say anymore. Oh, cool. I'm second.
All right. So the order is Ginger's first, followed by Randy, followed by Tuki, which is me.
All right. For the race, because next week we're going to be talking about certain little someones, I'm going to do a preview and say halfling.
Uh-oh. Okay. I think we'll make the halfling be a really stoic paladin.
Paladin of justice, perhaps?
Maybe.
Or maybe evil?
Ooh, Oathbreaker? What's the subclass?
No,
Frodo
I get to
would
pick
never.
the subclass. And the subclass is going to be glory.
Oh, all right. So for appearance, I'm going to say, okay, it's a paladin of glory. I kind of wanted them to be sort of like it's a halfling, but they look like a member of My Chemical Romance. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Like they finished the Black Parade. I know that's not them, but whatever. And they just, just found new.
They kind of have
light.
the emo, like the anime bangs. They got the eyeliner. They're just like, they're like for glory, but like in a very earnest, like emo way.
And with a hair flip, of course.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so for their background, then they are going to be an acolyte due to the past of the Black Parade.
What? This is an interesting mix of emo and glory.
They had like a long history of like, the acolytes, and they were doing all this like crazy stuff.
They're just always trying to recapture their glory days.
Yeah, we'll do that. They're trying to just recapture their glory days.
Well, for personality trait then, going with this theme, and I'm just going to say that everything is very glorious to them. So, and very dramatic. So even the little things, they get hyped up. Maybe they get their group hyped up, but in reality, they're just like refilling their rations at the store. But to them, it's glory.
For ideals, they're going to be extremely loyal to their party members, because without comrades to observe your glory, how will your story get told?
Oh. For their bonds is a childhood friend that they've been searching for ever since they left the parade, or just left home, we'll say.
Will they ever be able to find them?
We'll find out. Maybe they'll find out. Someone will find out.
Please find out for us.
Please find out and tell us.
For flaws, I'm going to go with they are very easily saddened by a lack of glory. If they don't get some good credit, they're just going to mope around for a while.
That feels personal, but okay. For their item, they have a guitar. No reason.
Is it just because they're cool, or?
Yeah, it's a look, but also it's like, it's a good way to raise morale, pick up everybody's spirits at the end of a long, hard day at the campsite, stuff like that. And they just kind of like being a rock star on the side.
They just play Wonderwall all the time. And that's the only song they know.
Well, their name will be Barry Way.
No way. Can you spell that?
BERRYWAY. Barry Way.
I see what you did there.
Thanks.
Way to end this on a high note.
This honestly has been fitting well with some stuff that's been going on with me recently.
Oh no.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this session and want to hear more, you can find us on Twitter at Dysfictional for our latest updates and downloads.
Original music for this podcast is provided by Joshua Silver, the artist known as Dimonon on Spotify.
And if you ever get into a possessed situation, killing them should at least be the second option.